Well, welcome. This is Melissa Sheehan with the Climate Hub Partnership Project. I have one of my colleagues here, Alan Taylor, who works at Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture in Curtis, Nebraska. He did a really interesting group assignment for one of his classes in Loess Canyon. And so I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce himself and talk a little bit about where he's at.
Lovely. Appreciate that. So, as he said, Alan Taylor, I've been in this area for about 25 years, as well as teaching at the local college. I'm also a landowner here in the Loess Hills area, and I've been part of a community burn group. So it's the ranchers in this area realizing that the eastern red cedar encroachment was taking over and damaging our rangelands. We formed this group in the early 2000s and started doing prescribed burn to control the eastern red cedar, as we found that was well, in our area at least, the best way to control the cedar populations and restore this area back to its natural prairie state. It is hilly country, some of it's fairly steep, and the soil is a little more clay-based, and henceforth the cedars really like that, and they thrive here. The cedars were introduced, decades ago when folks were looking for windbreaks, and they're a fast-growing tree with lots of limbs and do a good job, but then wildlife spreads seeds, and there we go, and it was taking over the range. I remember talking with one of the local producers 20 years ago, saying how his stalking rates had decreased over the last 15 to 20 years, to where he was stalking basically 2/3 of what he ran earlier on his same range. And so the group I'm with on a normal year will burn somewhere between 8,000 to 10,000 acres of this area. We kind of do it in rotation, and all the ranchers gather together, and we all work together to help each other do these controlled burns. Current president is Scott Stout, and I utilize him in the classroom situation when we get to talking about prescribed burn and cedar control. I have Scott come in, and he's got some great videos and presentations of what it takes to do a controlled burn, the cost of doing a controlled burn, because it's a lot of labor. And then on the other side, there's the government agencies in the area. They want to see this revert back to its prairie origins. The wildlife and the plant life are prairie, not forest. And so there's government funds to help offset the cost of doing this prescribed burn. So what we do in the classroom is, first off, we go out and we tour some areas that have had controlled burn, some areas that have not had controlled burn. I wish I'd have got a picture of it for this slide set, but if I stand on a certain ridge line on my rangeland, you can look to see where my neighbor has never burned, and it's strictly forest. It would be 80% canopied. Then there's a little strip of my ground that was burned in 2004, and then another chunk of ground that was burnt in 2014. And to see the contrast of that is just amazing, to see what you have or what the cedars will do to your range if you don't control it. So we take the students out, we go see these areas, we go look at areas that have had controlled burn, areas that haven't, areas where they're doing the controlled burn, and the work that they have to do to set it up in setting up their buffer zones, how far they've got to mechanically get rid of the trees and move them in so that we don't have big fire canopying over and going to the neighbors. And so we show them all that. Then we'll get on to these platforms, such as range analysis platform or web soil survey. We'll use those to calculate what the stalking rate is in an area that has been controlled. The cedars have been controlled in, and then we look at the forage production and the stalking rate in an area that has not had cedar control. And so we'll do that math of what the stalking rate would be between those two pieces of ground. Then we get to looking at the economics. All right. So if I am less, I'm running 20% less livestock because I haven't done cedar control, what does that mean in gross dollars or revenue per acre on that? And then we look at the decreased revenue, what it costs to do the burn, the increase in stalking rate that allows you to do that. And they put it together, and then the students do a presentation of what they have calculated, what they put together.
Well, that's great. Can you describe this picture that's in the background of this slide? Is this after a burn?
Picture that is shown there is my range after it was burnt in early spring, and then this is now the end of May as my daughter and I are putting in some fence, and I just snapped that picture to show how good a job it had done. Now, I was discussing, when you do a controlled burn, you never get all the cedars killed. If you can get 70 to 80% of them burnt, you've done a really good job. The larger the cedar tree is, the harder it is to get it to burn. It requires a great deal more heat generated by the fire. So if you can do this on a more consistent basis every 10 to 15 years before the cedars basically get thigh high, it doesn't take a lot of thermal units to kill that cambium layer on the tree and have them die. So it's a lot easier to control the cedars if you don't let them get too big. Great.
Well, thank you for that context. I know one thing that educators will find on our website is a lesson plan of how this group assignment played out. I know, Alan, you've done a great job kind of explaining some of the key points of what it looks like to take students out and have an experiential element to teaching so that they kind of live and feel what this is like and what the impact is for landowners and what it is, the impact on the land itself and how that changes the landscape completely. So you can see a brief overview here. I guess gave a snapshot on what this lesson plan looks like. And then as Alan shared, some key preparation components would be to discuss that plant encroachment of prairie ranges, see if there's a guest speaker that could come in. Like, I know you've said you've worked with Scott Stout a considerable amount over the years. And so maybe there's the president that you could reach out to of other prescribed burn associations in your area. Also a tour that used controlled burning and rangeland, teach how to use the rangeland analysis platform, maybe how to integrate Excel spreadsheets. I know some students struggle with that. And where the agriculture livestock values land. So anything else you want to add, especially like using the RAP, potentially that rangeland analysis platform?
The rangeland analysis platform is really good in that you can do two of the segments on this slide set. So let's talk about discussing woody planting encroachment on the prairies. With the analysis platform, you can select on there and look at historical satellite imagery showing what the prairies looked like 20, 30 years ago and what they look like now. And you can see the progression of the woody encroachment across the prairies, from Texas to Canada. And you can see how it, primarily has been moving from east to west. And it gives you a good overview and see, all right, this is what's happening. This is how that's growing in size and taking over the prairies. And then you can use the platform to give you, forage production in a given area. You can select the geographical area. All right, so what's the annual forage production in pounds per acre on that? You can take that and then you can do the math by hand with a calculator and a piece of paper. Well, it works really well. If we use the web soil survey, that's where we'll use the spreadsheet, the Excel more on the web soil than we will with RAP, in that in web soil survey, it gives you forage production based upon soil types. And so if you select out a geographical area in web soil, then you'll have about a half a dozen to a dozen different soil types, the number of acres that's in that soil type, and then the forage production for that soil type. And that's easy to just copy and paste those numbers into an Excel spreadsheet, and then just do your math of, so, you know, when we're showing these kids, all right, so you've got a gross total of 2,500 pounds per acre on a 90% dry matter basis of your forage. Well, then you've got to do the math of, well, what's our utilization rate? And in class, we discuss, if I'm doing a year-long grazing, then my utilization rate is going to be lower. It's going to be down in the 20% range. If I'm doing some rotational, that'll allow that to creep up. If I'm doing a more intensive rate rotation, then I can creep it up still more. So, you know, depending on what you're going to do as far as your grazing practices, and you'll adjust that utilization rate. We discuss what happens to the other part of it, you know, trampling, insects, you know, the traditional take half, leave half sort of a thing. And, you know, we discuss other options, because in different areas, that's changing a little bit, that idea of take half and leave half. There's getting to be more of a discussion about, well, let's take most of it and then give it a good long rest. So we talk about the pros and cons of both of those thought processes on range utilization. But anyway, then use that. And then in class, I don't use AUMs. I just use pounds of intake based upon animal size, is primarily how we do the calculations. So if we've got because I make them do an assignment where they have to do it both using cattle, but in one assignment, I let them pick their species. So they might use cattle, they might use sheep, they might use goats. I think one kid did it on buffalo one year. And so then we'll use that based on the body size of the animal, determine what the animal's consumption is going to be, and then do the math from there. And, you know, how long we're going to graze on that piece of ground. So I make them calculate an overall stalking rate, and then a stalking rate per pasture, or sorry, not a stalking rate per pasture, but how many days per pasture we can be in if we're doing a rotational grazing. So I have a big assignment that's a year-end assignment where they have to take a piece of ground, figure out the stalking rate, figure out a rotational program with a minimum of 3 pastures. They can go more, but it has to be a minimum of 3. Figure out how many days are going to be in each pasture, do a 3-year rotational plan, and then present that to the class along with a drought plan, because we're always going to have drought, no matter, you know, this is Western Nebraska. It's going to get dry. It's just a matter of when. So you better have a plan of how you're going to manage that. And web soil survey will let you do that. They'll give you above average moist rainfall, average, and below average. So you can take that below average and utilize that for, okay, that's how much forage loss I'm going to have due to drought. And you better put together a plan. It can be as simple as, oh, I'm just going to sell off all the livestock, or it's going to be, I'm going to buy hay, or I'm going to, you know, like several kids we got mama cow calf, and we'll run yearlings. And my yearlings are my safety valve for when it's dry, and I can not run them on the range. I can just sell them instead of running them on pasture. So you got to come up with a plan, and then at least one range improvement project. A fence here to help split up a bigger piece, maybe a water improvement, something to that effect, where they are going to calculate out the cost of what is that range improvement going to take. You know, how much am I going to have to spend on building that new fence or putting in that water system? And then put it all on a PowerPoint form, dress nice. I don't let them wear blue jeans. I give them extra credit if they wear a tie, or
Nice.
the ladies put on a dress and or a skirt, work suit, whatever, and then present it to the class. And that's their final. That's their final for the range class.
Business professional.
Yes,
well,
business.
That sounds like a really robust way to also bring out all of those different moving parts you talked about, the critical thinking in the students, some of that career preparation for what they'll be doing long term, hopefully in the field. So I do want to highlight as we kind of close out today. I know that you've shared a couple of videos of fire. I don't know if you want to play one of them, but or a portion. I can hit play for a portion of each of these, but just wanted to kind of showcase a little bit of the work that you've been doing and the expertise you've had for such a long time in this space. So here we go. All right. Tell us a little bit about this one, this first video, Alan.
Well, both videos are from the same controlled burn that we did. Oh, it's probably 6 or 7 years ago. I got to admit, you might call me a little bit of a firebug. I love it when that fire's rocking and rolling like that, and it is just cooking cedars. You know it's getting the job done. So this is just an area where it was really thick. It's in a bit of a draw, and the fire just worked up the draw and hit this big, thick pocket of cedars. And boy, they just, you know, if the humidity's right, the wind is right, and the temperature's right, you can really get to cooking the cedars. And this is just a shot of where we're doing that. The motor you can hear is I'm sitting on the back of a pickup truck that has a 500-gallon tank with a motor and a hose, and we are laying a wet line down. So to describe that, you have your boundary of where the fire is going to be, and you start out at the where the wind is blowing to. So let's say the wind is blowing from south to north. So you can start on the north end and work your way back to the south. One group going on the east side, one group coming around the west side. And you've got folks with drip torches out in front, and they're laying down a fire line. Well, let me start again. You've got a truck out in front laying down a wet line. Mm-hmm. So he's just spraying water on the ground in about a 1 foot width. And then the folks with drip torches are coming along, dropping the mixture of diesel fuel and gasoline and letting it drop. And then that's burning. And then you've got another pumper truck or two that are falling behind that. They're making sure the fire is out when it hits the wet line and burning in towards the center of what you want, your geographical area that you're burning. And that's just what we're doing right there is laying down I think I'm in the second truck, making sure it stays within its boundaries. We stopped for a minute, took that video. It's fun. It is fun when it gets to burning. That's a rush. I love it.
Yeah, there's always it. I know for those who are not as familiar with the prescribed burn, it's always impressive to think about it. It's a big operation for the most part. Y'all have strategy in the way you do it, the number of people supporting, and it does the job, as you said.
I think this particular burn was around 2,500 acres that we did that day. We would have had a good 40 or so people there to help out to get it done. And that would be typical of anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 acres that we would do at a time with a crew of at least somewhere between 30 and 50. You know, a lot of pumper trucks, a lot of stationed water so you can go fill them back up. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's a lot of fun to do. And you can see the pictures like from before on my place. What a difference it makes, you know, provided you get a little Mother Nature's help and it rains on it.
Right. And I have this one other video. I'm gonna play this one too, so you can kind of get a feel of where this at. You can actually see some of these live trees a little bit more clearly. Let me hit play.
Wow. I ain't getting anywhere near that.
All right. Anything you want to add on this one?
You can see us laying down that that burn line on the outer side. And what we also have going is you'll have folks going across the middle of the burn area, lane lines, and getting the center burn. So you don't just burn all the way outside. You've got internal ignition going on. You can see the nice little black line layer that we're doing on the outside, but some folks have been on four-wheelers going across along the bottom of the draws and along the top of the draws. Because what's interesting about fire, obviously heat rises. And so if you can get a little heat up top, let's say you're doing a kind of a long draw. You got one person laying a fire line on top of the ridge line, another person laying a fire line in the bottom of the ridge line. That heat generated from the top sucks the oxygen, or that burn sucks the oxygen up along with the heat from the bottom rising, and you can get that fire to just really go rushing up the side hills there. And that's where the thick trees are, is along the side hills, and that's where the bigger ones are and the harder ones to kill. So if you can get that heat generated and that fire moving upwards, then you can see it's really cooking those trees right there. It's doing a great job. And you know, you can hear me in the video saying I'm not getting anywhere near that. We're a good, well, I'll bet we're 100 yards away, and it is hot. It was uncomfortably hot from where I was taking that video.
Sure. Well, as we close out today, I just kind of wanted to open it up for any reflections you have, words of wisdom. I think what's beautiful about your experience, Alan, is you live this life outside of the classroom. So you are applying what you're teaching in the context of your own land and the support of other landowners and the passion they have for taking care of natural resources. So with that in mind, what reflections would you have in looking at this assignment that you've put together to share with other educators of lessons learned or any tips you'd have to close out?
Sure. So when it comes to educating the students, break it into small little segments. So I kind of went over the whole thing of, all right, this is what the total assignment is. But we do a whole bunch of assignments preceding that, such as how to just even look up stuff on range analysis platform. Mm-hmm. Then there'll be a small assignment. All right, calculate the stalking rate for just this section of ground. Not worry about rotation or anything like that. Go slow on the math. I tend to go a little fast. I have to work on that. I have to take my time and really slow down when I'm presenting that math of how you want to do that. And so don't rush it on the math side. Break it up into small segments to where you do a little portion of the whole leading up to the big assignment. Mm-hmm. And that works best on, hopefully the students can put it all together, but that's tend to be in the biggest thing is break it up to manageable pieces and don't rush the math.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you for your time, Alan, and being such an advocate for these climate smart ag practices, both personally and professionally. We appreciate your expertise and the gifts that you're sharing to these students. So
it's a lot of fun. I like it. I love teaching. The kids are great. And, for us anyway, the range management class is an elective. And so they really want to be there. And that's all.
Love it. Great. Well, thanks so much. And I hope you all get to apply some of these tools that Alan